Hi friends, welcome to GMAT Points video series. I'm Sayali Ma'am. In this particular video, I'll be walking you through GMAT's Quantitative Reasoning. I'll tell you about the section, how to prepare for it, everything about the section as well as how you can use this course to crack GMAT. So let's get started. So firstly, I'll tell you about the format, exactly how many questions are asked, what is the scoring mechanism. I'll explain everything in this particular video. So firstly, there are 21 questions. This is an adaptive mock. So if you have taken any other test, an adaptive test is very different from normal test. And I'll tell you the key differences. In an adaptive test, you have to only move forward. So for example, if you go from question 1 to question 2, then you have to go to question 3. Say suppose at question 3 you feel that okay, I made a mistake in question 1. Can I go back to question 1? So backward movement is not allowed. You have to move forward. Similarly, if you feel that I can't answer question 3, can I skip this question? So skipping a question is also not allowed. What you are allowed to do is at the end of all 21 questions, you will get a list of all the questions that you have attempted, all the answers you have put. Then you can review and edit 3 of the answers, up to 3 of the answers. You need not make any changes, but you have the option of editing up to 3 of the answers. But essentially, while the section is going on, there is no backward movement, and to move forward, you have to mark an answer. So this is basically the idea for adaptive test. But why is it this way? Why can't I skip a question? Why can't I move backward? See, the whole point of an adaptive mock is that once you answer one question, suppose I answer question number 1. If I get it correct, then I go to a question number 2, which is slightly harder. If I get it wrong, then I move to a question number 2, which is slightly easier. So an adaptive mock basically adapts the difficulty level of the questions depending on how you are answering. If you are answering correctly, it gives you progressively harder questions. If you answer it incorrectly, it gives you progressively easier questions. So this is the whole point, which makes it difficult for you to skip a question. Because for them to fetch a question number 3, they need your answer for question number 2. So they don't allow you to skip a question. Similarly, going back is not allowed, because if you change the question answer for question number 1, then the question number 2 is also affected. So because of that, within the section, you are not allowed to go back. You are allowed to change the marking of up to 3 of the answers as such. Now, how many minutes do you have? You have 45 minutes to answer 21 questions. So more than approximately about 2 minutes per question, slightly more than 2 minutes per question. What is exactly asked over here? Basically, this is made up of only arithmetic and algebra. But within arithmetic and algebra, you should also consider number systems and like probability and statistics and counting methods. All of this is included in the course. What is not included, which was included in earlier GMATs, is geometry. Geometry has been removed. And by removing geometry, they have actually considerably simplified the course, because now the amount of course content that you have to actually cover is much lesser. Having said that, because the course content is lesser, you are expected to go deeper. There is more expectation of getting things right, because if things become simpler, then your accuracy required becomes higher. Okay, so remember, the content is lesser to do than last time, but the expectation is that you have to do that lesser content more accurately. Again, the review option. See, earlier GMATs did not allow you to review, which meant that after the choice was made, it was immutable. You couldn't change it in any way. Now, however, they allow you to change up to 3 of the options. So you can review and edit up to 3 answers. So you can review and edit up to 3 answers at the end of the section. So after I answer all the 21 questions, I'll be given a screen where all 21 options, 21 question links as well as answer links are given, and I can choose to edit up to 3 of the answers. I need not actually edit anything. I can feel that, okay, I have made the right choice. But if you felt that, okay, I didn't answer this question properly, or if you felt that I didn't have time, so I marked something and moved on, and now I'll try to solve this question, you have the option of changing the answer over here. However, I'll give you a caveat. This comes with a cost. The cost is that suppose you had answered a question incorrectly earlier, your remaining questions that were picked would have been easier, and this would be a implicit negative penalty. I'll tell you more about the scoring mechanism because it is slightly complicated, but I would say that suppose you got all questions correct, okay, but you got all questions correct after editing a few answers. still your score will reflect the fact that you edited a few answers. Why? Because it would essentially consider the remaining questions that you have selected based on the fact that you had incorrectly selected some answers as such. So I'll tell you more about the scoring mechanism, but also remember, even with review and edit, the fact that if you don't select the right answer in the first go, it can still affect your overall marks. Even if you edit and select the right answer later on, that initial incorrect selection will still affect your marks. Lastly, this is a computer adaptive test. So basically it adapts to your difficulty level. As you answer correctly, it will keep on increasing the difficulty level. As you answer incorrectly, it will decrease difficulty level. But a lot of people suddenly, when they get an easy question on their screen, they feel that, did I make a mistake in the previous answer? That is not necessary. See, it will progressively increase in difficulty level, or it will progressively decrease in difficulty level, provided there is no change in the topic. So suddenly if you move from, like say, if you move from arithmetic to probability, because there's a change in topic, the difficulty level will be different. They don't assume that because you were good at arithmetic, you will also be good at probability. So you can suddenly get an easier question from, say, algebra or probability. The second reason why you might suddenly get an easy question is that there are some questions which are test questions which are not considered in your marking. And because these are test questions, these are essentially questions where the GMAT is also not sure of the difficulty level. These questions essentially are used and your response is taken to gauge the difficulty level of the question. So they don't know exactly how difficult this question is. So suddenly you might get a very easy question and you might wonder that, why did I get an easy question? Did I do the previous question incorrectly? It might not be the case at all. It might just be that you have been served a test question, which is why the difficulty level is lower. So don't necessarily infer that if I'm getting an easy question on, like say, the 13th question, then the 12th answer was wrong. That is not necessarily the case. The easy question could be because you got, or there was a change in topic, or the easy question could be a test question. Okay. Now let me actually come to the idea of, firstly, another thing is that of scoring and scoring scale. So let me actually explain the scoring properly and how it affects any changes, any errors, how does it affect your overall score. So the scoring scale is between 60 to 90 and the overall score is between 205 to 805, 805 being a perfect score. So how does your individual score actually contribute to the final score? See, each of these three sections, quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning and data insights, are taken together and a composite score is formed. So the overall GMAT score that you get is a composite score of all three of these sections combined in a certain way. They are not added together. They are essentially combined in an equal proportion. In a certain formula is used to basically convert these individual section scores to a composite GMAT score. Now let us come to the individual scoring mechanism. So consider this is your GMAT. These are the 21 questions that are there. Okay, I'm not putting all 21, but suppose these are the 21 questions that are there. Now suppose that if you make a mistake, say in the second question, okay, suppose for the first question you got it right, the second question is a mistake. What happens to the third question? The third question is lower in difficulty level. The minute you get served a lower difficulty level question, there is an implicit penalty involved in it. What is the penalty? See, firstly, you lose marks of the second question you got wrong. Secondly, the more harder questions you get right, the more marks you get. So basically the marks that you get out of answering questions depends not only whether you gave the correct answer, but what was also the difficulty level of the question that you answered. So suppose you gave a very difficult question correctly, you will get a lot of positive marks from that. If you answer a difficult question incorrectly, the negative marking for that will be lesser. If you gave a easy question, answered an easy question correctly, it won't give you the same level, because essentially whether you answered it correctly or incorrectly, how much score addition happens depends on the difficulty level of the question. So an easier question will not give you as much positive boost. On the other hand, if you score or if you incorrectly answer an easier question, it actually considerably, on the other hand, if you give a wrong answer for an easier question, it will considerably reduce your score. So suppose if I give the wrong answer for the second question, particularly if you make a mistake early on in the section, it has a much bigger negative impact on the remaining questions, because not only your third, fourth, multiple questions will be of a lower difficulty level, thereby depressing your score. So if you make mistakes early on in the section, it has a considerable negative impact on your score rather than later on in the section. Similarly, if you make mistakes one after the other, suppose you are given you give the wrong answer, and in the next question also, when you are given an easier question also, you give again a wrong answer, it will have a very bad negative impact on your score. So always whenever you are actually solving, right, it is very important to remember that at the start of the section, you should not make any mistakes. So always when you are solving, you should remember that at the start of the section, you should not make any mistakes, and near the end of the section also, you should not make a large number of mistakes. So what often happens is that near the end of the section, say about 19, 20, 21st, people tend to run out of time. So because they run out of time, what happens is that 19 is marked as incorrect, 20 is taken off a lower difficulty level, it is also marked as incorrect, 21st is of even lower difficulty level, even that is marked as incorrect. So that has like a huge compounded effect on your score. So always remember, you have to solve all 21 questions. You cannot leave any questions unattempted at the end, because that will have a considerable negative impact, because it would essentially be that you have answered one question incorrectly, then you have answered an easier question incorrectly, then you have answered another even easier question incorrectly. So you have to make sure that you have to pace yourself. Try to keep up to 2 minutes per question. You should have some time left over to do review and edit. Okay. Now, how does, I had mentioned that even if you review and edit your answers, still there will be some negative penalty if you make a wrong choice early on. So what happens is that suppose you made a error in say the 4th question, you picked the wrong answer. Now because you picked the wrong answer, 5 will be of a lower difficulty level, even 6 to an extent will be of a lower difficulty level. So even if you, after the end of the section, even if you change the answer of 4, the fact that you lost some difficulty points in 5 and 6 will still be apparent in your final score. So if you really want to do well in the initial questions, you should not make any mistake, because those first 5-10 questions have a lot of weightage. They end up influencing the difficulty of the entire section. So if you make mistakes at the early start of your section, it will have a huge impact on the score. Similarly, if you make a mistake early on and you actually change the answer also, the impact of that wrong choice will continue to affect, at least it will have some partial effect on your score. By changing it to the correct answer, you will kind of mitigate the negative impact, but not entirely. Okay, so this is basically about the adaptive section. So you have to remember that in 2 minutes, you have to answer all questions. You have to pick the correct answer as much as possible. Only if you're completely stuck should you pick something and move forward and then edit later on. Only if you're completely stuck should you pick something and move on and then review and edit later on. But don't make a habit of it, because the negative marking of that wrong choice lingers. Lastly, you have to stick to timing, because if you have multiple unattempted questions at the end, they will really cost you. So these 3 things you should remember. Be careful of the time. You should not have unattempted questions. Even if you are stuck, if you're really stuck, then mark something and move on, because the negative impact lingers, and try to make no mistakes in the first 10 questions of your section. Now let's go to what are the topics you should cover for this particular exam. So firstly, they say that it is arithmetic and algebra, but within arithmetic, they also consider statistics and counting methods. So probability, permutations and combinations is also included. Another thing is that number systems, basically number systems, factors, divisibility, exponents, decimals, place value, even that is considered. In algebra, you have your quadratic equations, linear equations, inequalities, functions, graphing, and measurement conversion. So most of arithmetic and algebra is there. In addition to that, you have basically counting methods, and you have number systems, particularly value, order, and factors. Okay, let's take a closer look at arithmetic. What is there in arithmetic? See, basically you have your ratio and proportion, fractions, percentages. You also have time, speed, distance, time and work, and mixtures. So these are the important aspects of arithmetic. The questions can be in PS format, which is problem solving format, or it can be in data sufficiency format. So you have to be ready for both formats of questions. Similarly, in statistics, progressions, and probability, you will have basically questions on statistics, estimation, on like say mean, median, mode. You would also have questions about sets, counting methods, about probability, about sequences and series. So progressions, AP, GP, all of this will be also included in this particular part. In value, order and factors, you have to have a basic idea of number sense, that is number systems, what are decimals, what are fractions, what are factors, divisibility, what is like exponents, what is place value, face value. All of these basic aspects of the number line are included in this particular exam. In algebra, you have your algebraic expressions, so basic algebraic expressions, linear equations, quadratic equations, you have inequalities, graphing of these different types of equations like linear equations, inequalities, quadratic. You should know how to graph these equations, as well as you should be able to solve questions based on functions involving these equations. So functions involving quadratic equations, functions involving linear equations. So functions and graphing is basically based on the algebraic expressions, linear equations, quadratic equations, etc. There's also measurement conversion. Remember, the portion is not huge, but it is important to be exact and thorough with all of it. Because if you see the scoring mechanism, you had a considerable negative penalty for making mistakes. So here accuracy matters a lot more than most of the exams. You have to be as accurate as possible. So while the portion is lesser, you have to be very, very good at it. You have to be near perfect at it. Another thing that you have to remember is that all of these questions have options. So even if a particular question is slightly harder to solve, I want you to remember that you can try to solve the question using the options. This is not possible in say data sufficiency, but in problem solving. Suppose you have a quadratic equations question, try to solve it using say the options. Try to use option elimination or option substitution to try to find the answer. This is in case you get stuck in the particular question. So you have multiple methods. One is through the question and the other is through the options to try to see whether you can find the answer. Okay, but very important thing is that you have to pace yourself. Give yourself only 2 minutes per question. There will be some difficult questions like maybe 1 or 2 overall where you might need more than 2 minutes, but overall try to pace yourself whenever you are completing a question. Just see that you are less than 2 minutes per question as such. That would be a good heuristic to ensure that you complete the entire section, as well as after that you have time to actually check, review and edit any answers that you think might be erroneous. Now let's go to the course outline. We'll cover how you can use the course to crack GMAT. So first thing that I would always recommend all students to do is take a diagnostic assessment. If you take a diagnostic assessment, you will get a very good idea of where you start. Whenever you start your preparation, you should have a very clear idea of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. A lot of students have sections that they are fairly good at and some sections that they are fairly poor at. So your efforts in the section that you are not good at should be twice the amount of effort that you are putting in the other sections. Because always remember, as humans, we tend to do what we are good at and we do more of that. But in this particular exam, we have to do more in the section that we are actually not good at. We have to compensate for that by putting in extra efforts in that particular section. So always begin your preparation through a diagnostic assessment. After the diagnostic assessment, please go through the concepts. So we have covered each of these concepts, all the portion in terms of concept videos. The concept videos also have concept tests. So you see the video, understand what is explained, and then please take the accompanying concept test. After that, I want you to do targeted practice. So we have a study room. So the study room has a lot of questions from all of these topics. So this targeted practice will help you understand that, okay, if I'm weak in this particular subject, I'll do more questions on this topic. So from that, you will also see that, okay, I am weak in say arithmetic. I'll solve a lot of arithmetic questions from the study room. You will see improvement in your attempt rate. You will see improvement in your understanding also. A lot of times people feel that, okay, GMAT is about like seeing a lot of videos. You have to go through a lot of videos. But I would actually disagree. Any test like this requires you to solve a lot of questions, not see videos, but solve questions by yourself. So I would say one of the most important and often overlooked part of GMAT preparation is in fact this targeted practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to score on the GMAT exam. Finally, after you have done the concept coverage, you have done the targeted practice, you should move on to the full length mock test. So we have 10 mock tests. In addition to that, we'll have sectional tests also. That is tests targeting each of the individual sections. With these number of mock tests, you have the ability to essentially test what you are doing correctly, what you are doing incorrectly. So then you can say that, okay, I'm doing these things correctly, I'm good at these concepts, I'm weak in certain concepts, I need to revise them, I need to practice them from the study room. So this is our entire idea of the course, that you should learn through the concept videos, you should practice through the study room, and you should basically test using the mocks and sectionals. If you complete all three aspects and basically consider the feedback of the mocks and practice again, cover the concepts again, if you close this loop of feedback and then practice and learning plus practice and learning, what you will see is that you will iteratively get much better at giving this exam. The more tests you take, the more mocks you take, you will see a considerable improvement in your score. So make sure that you start with the diagnostic assessment, then take a concept deep dive, targeted practice, full length mocks and test, and make sure that this part continues after the mocks and tests. Do not stop at mocks and tests. Each of these diagnoses tells you that you have to either revise a concept or practice more questions from a particular topic. So remember, the entire course is there to help you, but it will only help you if you solve yourself. So while seeing the concept videos, pause the video, solve yourself. Use the entire question bank. The question bank has a lot of questions. There are 1500 plus questions, but that will work only if you start solving. So make sure that you solve all the 1500 quant questions. You see the entire videos that are there. There are, I think, 130 plus videos. So make sure all of this is completed, and there are 10 plus mock tests, plus there are a lot of sectional tests. If you utilize all of these, there is no reason why you cannot score a perfect score in the quant section. So best of luck, and I hope that we can help you achieve the perfect score in GMAT Quant.